May 18, 1980. A peaceful Sunday morning became the deadliest volcanic eruption in U.S. history. But it was only the beginning. A mountain that had stood for centuries suddenly exploded with the force of 500 atomic bombs. Something that should not have happened. From that moment, the disaster threatened not just Washington, but changed how the world monitors volcanoes forever. The first warning signs appeared on March 20, 1980, almost 2 months before the disaster. At 3:47 p.m., a magnitude 4.2 earthquake struck beneath Mount St. Helens, shaking the ground and briefly alarming residents. It was unusual, but not impossible, for a dormant volcano that had been silent for 123 years. Over the next week, hundreds more earthquakes rattled the mountain, each one a whisper that something was waking beneath the surface. But life quickly returned to normal, and still no one knew this was the Earth's first alert before the catastrophe. On March 27, 1980, steam and ash began venting from the summit. A new crater appeared at the peak, and within days a second crater formed beside it. The mountain was breathing again. Scientists rushed to the site, setting up monitoring equipment, measuring gas emissions, tracking every tremor. They knew an eruption was possible, maybe even likely, but no one could predict when or how violently it would come. What terrified them most was what they saw on the north face. A massive bulge was growing on the mountainside, pushing outward at an alarming rate of 5 feet per day. The entire north flank was swelling like a blister about to burst. It was a warning sign that magma was rising, building pressure, looking for a way out. The mountain was becoming a bomb with a lit fuse, and no one knew how long that fuse would burn. April rolled into May. The earthquakes continued. The bulge kept growing. Geologists urged officials to expand the evacuation zones. Some listened, others did not. Homeowners refused to leave. Loggers wanted to work. And one man, 83-year-old Harry Truman, became a symbol of defiance. He had lived at Spirit Lake for 54 years at the base of the mountain, and he was not going anywhere. He told reporters that nobody knows more about this mountain than Harry, and that the mountain was going to be there for a long, long time yet. May 18, 1980, 8:32 a.m. David Johnston, a 30-year-old volcanologist, was stationed at an observation post 6 miles north of the summit. He had volunteered for the shift, monitoring the mountain through the night. The morning was clear and calm, perfect visibility. Then the ground began to shake. A magnitude 5.1 earthquake struck directly beneath the north face. Within seconds, the entire bulge, a mass of rock and ice over 1,300 feet high, began to collapse. The largest landslide in recorded history was happening right before Johnston's eyes. He grabbed his radio. His voice cracked through the static. "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Those were his last words. The landslide tore down the mountain at over 110 miles per hour, removing the entire north face and releasing the pressure that had been building for months. And when that pressure was released, the mountain did not just erupt, it exploded sideways. A lateral blast of superheated gas, ash, and rock shot out horizontally at nearly 300 miles per hour. The temperature reached 660 degrees Fahrenheit. Everything in its path was incinerated. Trees that had stood for centuries were snapped like matchsticks or ripped from the ground entirely. The blast zone extended 19 miles to the north, covering an area of 230 square miles. David Johnston's observation post was vaporized. His body was never found. At the same moment, the vertical eruption column shot 15 miles into the sky, punching through the stratosphere. Ash and pumice rained down across Washington, Idaho, and Montana. The sky turned black in the middle of the day. Drivers pulled over, unable to see. Airports shut down. The ash was so fine it infiltrated engines, electronics, even lungs. Spirit Lake, where Harry Truman had refused to leave, was obliterated. The landslide crashed into the water, creating a wave that surged 850 feet up the opposite ridge. When the water settled, the lake bed had risen 200 feet, buried under millions of tons of debris. Harry's lodge, his cats, his piano, everything vanished beneath the rubble. His body, like Johnston's, was never recovered, but the destruction did not stop there. The heat from the blast melted snow and ice on the mountain, creating catastrophic mud flows called lahars. These rivers of volcanic debris, moving at up to 50 miles per hour, roared down river valleys, destroying bridges, homes, and logging camps. The Toutle River, once a clear mountain stream, became a churning mass of mud, logs, and boulders. It swept away everything in its path, including vehicles and structures miles from the mountain. One lahar carried enough sediment to fill the Columbia River shipping channel, stranding dozens of ships in port. The economic impact was immediate and staggering. For 9 hours, the eruption continued. Ash fell like snow across the Pacific Northwest. In Yakima, 85 miles away, the sky went dark at noon. Streetlights came on. People wore masks to breathe. The ash was so heavy it collapsed roofs. In Spokane, visibility dropped to 10 feet. Cars were abandoned on highways, engines choked with ash. When the sun finally broke through the haze the next day, the true scale of the destruction became clear. The entire top of the mountain was gone. Mount St. Helens had lost 1,300 feet of elevation. The graceful, symmetrical peak that had been called the Fuji of America was now a gaping horseshoe-shaped crater. The death toll was 57. Some, like Johnston, were scientists doing their jobs. Others, like Harry Truman, had refused to leave. Many were loggers working illegally in closed zones, or photographers and adventurers who thought they were far enough away. They were not. The blast moved faster and farther than anyone had predicted. Robert Landsberg, a photographer, was one of them. He was 4 miles from the summit when the blast hit. Realizing he could not outrun it, he kept shooting photos, documenting the wall of ash and gas racing toward him. Then he rewound the film, placed his camera in his backpack, and lay on top of it to protect it. His body was found 17 days later. The photos survived. They remain some of the most haunting images of the eruption. The cost of the disaster was immense. 57 lives were lost, 200 homes were destroyed, 185 miles of highway were buried or damaged, 15 miles of railway were erased, $1.1 billion in total damages. But the eruption of Mount St. Helens changed something even bigger. It changed how the world thinks about volcanoes. Before 1980, volcanic monitoring was limited. Scientists knew the basics, but predicting eruptions was more guesswork than science. Mount St. Helens forced a reckoning. The lateral blast, something rarely seen in modern history, showed that volcanoes do not always erupt straight up. The explosion triggered by a landslide demonstrated how quickly conditions can change. The loss of David Johnston, a dedicated scientist in what was thought to be a safe location, proved that even experts can underestimate nature's power. In the years that followed, the United States Geological Survey established the Cascades Volcano Observatory in Vancouver, Washington. Advanced seismic networks were deployed across the Pacific Northwest. Satellite monitoring, gas detection, and ground deformation measurements became standard. The lessons from Mount St. Helens were applied globally, from the Philippines to Italy to Japan. Today, the mountain is still active. A lava dome has been growing inside the crater since 2004. Scientists watch it constantly. They share what they learned because Mount St. Helens is not just a warning from the past. It is a reference for the future. Every volcano in the Cascade Range, from California to Canada, is now monitored with technology and protocols born from that Sunday morning in May. The eruption reminded us that the Earth is not tame. Nature operates on its own timeline, indifferent to human plans or presence. But it also reminded us that vigilance, preparation, and respect for the power beneath our feet can save lives. Mount St. Helens took everything in its path, but it could not take the lessons it taught. It could not erase the dedication of those who stayed to watch and to warn. Every seismograph reading, every gas sample, every evacuation plan in place today carries the memory of May 18, 1980. It is a reminder that some forces show no mercy. Knowledge, courage, and preparation remain.